we've got probably our favourite contributor in tonight, Dr. David Starkey. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to hand over to David and just say to him, David, how worried are you about Axel Rudakubana and the wider implications of what's happened this week?
To say worried is a very mild word, isn't it? The real problem is, I think we on the right are shunting ourselves into a terrible, dangerous cul-de-sac. There is no direct evidence of any Islamic element. If you actually look at the literature and the wonderful work, and again, we need to be using names here. Charlie Bentley Astor's work, which I hope everybody has been looking at online, she's gone over this in incredible detail. She's listed exactly what this man read. It's the most bizarre collection of stuff. Yes, there is the Al-Qaeda manual of how to do it. On the other hand, there are accounts of slave trading, what the British did to the Mau Mau. It's all, the only common thread is not Islam, it's pure, bloody, horrible, sustained violence. And what we've got to do, we've got to stop. I mean, why are we having this debate? Why has everything gone so wrong?
Because we think he's a terrorist.
Right, but of course.
But that is a red herring, I think. Does it matter if you go and kill 3 children, what name you're doing it in? It doesn't matter, does it?
Pause. It matters in terms of law, and it matters in terms of how the agencies of government respond. And the disaster is, we've got this wonderful account. Now, I'm going to do a terrible plug here, and I'm sorry it's not News International, it's the Daily Mail, which is a rival. And the Daily Mail's report on what the police, what I think the detective inspector in charge of the case said, is the most brilliant piece of reporting on this, which everybody should read. And what it says, this is the man in charge, he says, we recognised it was terrorism. Sorry, you said 3 people were killed. Do you know what? If it weren't for modern medicine, 15 would have been. Every one of the other girls who was injured until 3 or 4 years ago would have died.
What a good point.
This is a deliberate, large-scale massacre of innocent young girls.
Why does it matter to label it terrorism? I mean, the law apparently he wouldn't have got a bigger sentence.
Yes, he would.
Well, I saw a barrister saying today it wouldn't have affected his sentence.
Let's again just pause this. The trouble is, we've decided that terrorism means one thing. Why did the police think it was terrorism? It's called the duck argument, you know?
No.
Ash, if it looks like terrorism, if it sounds like terrorism, if people react to it.
Well, he terrorised those girls.
Literally terrorised. It's not just the girls. It is the entire community. The normal, people have been... Right, when I've talked about this, people have said, oh, well, you know, look at the Moors murders. The Moors murders don't do it publicly. This is designed...
It's revelling in it.
To revel in it and to inflict terror and to do it publicly without restraint. This is genuine terrorism. The trouble is, we've not looked at literature. We've not looked at the wonderful accounts of when terrorism begins 150 years ago. It begins in Russia. It begins in another society like ours, which is engaged in extraordinary conflicts between old and new, modern and medieval.
Didn't it originally come from a government, like the Spanish government was original?
If you like, the very... Okay, you're now challenging me.
No, I'm not.
No. I mean, let's get this right. The very first time the word is used is with the French Revolution.
Yeah.
With what we call the terror. This is when the new revolutionary government in France starts killing people. Deliberately, flamboyantly, publicly horrible. The procession of people, including even the king and queen, to the guillotine. And it's called the terror.
The terror, yeah.
But what happens in the middle of the 19th century, you get non-state terrorism. But what it's designed to do is to use you and me, we could all behave badly. The thought you would actually go and you would take a knife and you would stab a child. 120.
Well, that's what I thought about Hamas as well in Gaza.
Let's stick on this. 122 times, 130 that you would try to cut a head off, that you revel in the horror. And where I think we've got it wrong, there's a wonderful... let's look at Keir Starmer, the man who's been in charge of all of this.
Well, he's brought back government terror because people are terrified to protest, and he's put them in prison. Is it coming back?
We're wandering way, way, way from the point. Here is somebody who has never read a book. The only book he's read is a legal textbook and an Arsenal programme.
I think 1984 is a manual as well, probably used to.
He would not recognise the cover of 1984, or I suspect even the name of George Orwell. He is a person without any depth. His entire world is just defined by legal definition. What I'd like everybody listening to this programme to do is to try and read. There's a great, wonderful 19th century Russian novel called The Devils, or The Demons, by Dostoevsky. And it describes how terror begins. And it looks at two things. It looks at the isms, Islamism, rightism, whatever. And on the other hand, it focuses on the essential element. I want to kill. I like blood. I want to wound. And the problem is our entire programme of dealing with terrorism has ignored this. It's just focused on the isms. And again, it's become, the introduction that Andre gave. On the one hand, you have the right saying, this is all Islamic, and the left saying, oh, no, it isn't, and therefore it's not terrorism.
So when did this change? Because the IRA wasn't isms, was it? That was
Of course it was. The ism is Irish freedom.
Well, hang on a second. Let me ask this question. So here's the thing so first of all, I think you're right. So I've looked at this, and I've done this on this show, and I've done this on my YouTube channel, and I've said, what flavour of terrorist is he? You're saying, forget that for a second. Forget whether they're blowing you up for Ireland, blowing you up for Islam, the issue is they're blowing you up.
That is absolutely right. But the issue is also they like blowing you up.
Yes.
Again, if you look, we've got this wrong. We've decided that the thing that makes a terrorist is, do they read a manual?
Yes.
Do they have a political opinion? I don't think that's true. The people who do it, they are fundamentally like Axel. They are people destroyed, corrupt. Remember how one of the survivors describes him. He didn't look human. Those awful eyes, this strange meek-on forehead. So we've got to focus on that. And unfortunately, our entire machinery doesn't. We have this thing called PREVENT. This is supposed to look at terrorists.
So once again, can I just pull you up on this? Because
please.
A few years ago, I posed with a sword and bet the Islamic State 50 grand to kill me. Now, I was making, at the time, a joke. Some people laughed at me, other people took it seriously.
They always do, Andre. Yeah. How else would we deal with you?
That's Norris McWhirter's brother.
How else would we deal with you?
Here was my point. I genuinely took the view at the time that terrorists are not terrifying. Actually, what they are is sad individuals who want to beat up little girls. There is a common theme, which is much more common in modern terrorism than the ideologies that we debate, and that's get a load of little kids because I wouldn't want to have a go at their dads. And I just wonder whether you're right, and we should sit there and start to say to ourselves, look, what are these people? Virgins? Pathetic, sad individuals,
savage murderers,
eating sugar puffs in their underwear, reading Guns and Ammo magazine, and actually, you know what?
One-handed chaps at this time of night.
Exactly right.
Hopefully not watching this.
And actually, you start to think to yourself, I don't care what pretense you've come up with to blow yourself up or to do whatever or to beat up little girls.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, the point is, the reason you're beating up little girls is you're not brave enough to attack
them.
Doesn't that
just go back to my point? It doesn't matter. The terrorist word doesn't matter. I mean, he's done it. It's a horrific murder.
No. It does matter because it matters in how the state has reacted or not reacted. I also think, sorry, Andre, these poor, pathetic, inadequate people, we may mock them, we may call them cowards, but he took a knife.
He did.
And he killed 3, and he would have killed 15. And if he hadn't been stopped, he would have just continued. I'm sorry, you don't have to be very strong if you've got a knife and you've got a passive group of people. And remember, we are a disarmed society.
Yes.
We do not have weapons to respond. We are helpless, and we've deliberately made ourselves helpless. We rely on the state to protect us.
I mean, should that change?
Now, we'll go on. Let's go on to that. But sorry, all this business of talking about them cowards and denouncing them, it makes us feel better, but it doesn't stop what they do. You don't need to be very brave to set off a bomb.
Yes.
No,
I mean, you may need to be, well, it's a sort of false bravery to kill yourself, because you know, the suicide bombings, the Manchester Arena and all of this stuff. But what we've got to focus on, and what the state has not focused on, is not the ideology, it's the state of mind. It's this corrupted intelligence.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question, and I know you're a historian rather than a psychologist, but where does this state of mind come from? Because we're also hearing
we need to recognise evil.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The problem is
it's not mental illness. It's just an evil person.
Well, it is. We would call it criminal mental illness. And again, one of the great problems is when I am very, very ancient, both of you.
No.
I've just celebrated my 80th birthday.
Wow.
When I was a young man, somebody who looked like him would not have lasted outside a mental hospital more than 10 minutes.
Well, that was Margaret Thatcher, wasn't it, letting them all out of the asylums?
It is. And you know what? The left and the right corresponded. Actually work together, cooperate.
Because we wanted to save the money on the hospitals.
We wanted to save the money,
nice.
And the left said there was no such thing as mental illness. The right didn't only want to save the money on the hospitals. Gosh, these are gorgeous buildings.
They are.
They've got lovely gardens. I can just imagine £4 million flats here. By the way, I'd like to move in one, and I've got a nice.
And now they are those luxury flats.
And that's exactly what they are. We used to have a network of asylums, and once upon a time, somebody like
so you're saying Axel Rudakubana, when the Prevent programme, say in 1970, 1960, the equivalent, it didn't exist at the time, but the Prevent programme would have gone, this is a nutter, send him to Winnick.
He's a criminal, dangerous nutter.
Because he knows what he's doing, so he's not totally insane, but he's a criminal.
Debating that is neither here nor
Well, if you totally do Lally and kill him, you don't even know you've done it. That's different to him. He's just evil.
You see, again, I think this kind of dancing on a pin's head is neither here nor there. The important thing, there's a thing called criminal insanity. That is, you just want to do. Look, by anybody's definition, anybody who carries out mass murder is insane, in the sense that they're not normal people. But the problem is, again, let's be completely frank, the world that I grew up in, I had never met anybody with a different coloured skin to mine until I went to Cambridge at the age of 18 and a half. Part of what we've done is a good thing. We've decided we are diverse. That means the notion that there's a normal method of dressing, a normal method of behaviour, a normal method of walking, talking, speech has gone by the board. I mean, if you think of what everybody has said about this boy, that he's paraded with knives, with hockey sticks, that he's threatened to kill. He's actually rung up the police and said, what do I do if I want to kill somebody? And what do the police do? Well, apparently they put the phone down and say, oh, this doesn't sound very serious. So can we all just pause and reflect on that fact?
I mean, his school knew because of that hockey stick incident.
Everybody knew. Nobody took it.
But this comes back.
It's even worse. Nobody took it seriously. Now, gentlemen, if you don't take a thing seriously, that means presumably they deal with this sort of thing every day of the week.
Good point.
And none of us do anything about it.
But David,
we're the idiots, as Andre sometimes says.
We live in a world.
We're the idiots.
We live in a world where it's equal but different. You like to study, you like to write books, and you like to make academic lectures. Somebody
make
else...
pots of money and amuse myself and eat immensely expensive dinners, and I've arrived from one of them. Carry on.
But somebody else might be interested in sadomasochistic violence. It's equal but different. What we don't do is we don't turn around and say David Starkey's done the right thing, not least proved by the fact that whilst Axel Rudakubana was never cancelled, you were for a bit. Let's be clear on that.
We've gone mad. There's an element.
The bad people are the good people.
There's an element of madness. But then let's do something else. We've got to a state in which a boy can do, and again, I think we need to be really clear about this. His parents seem to have repeatedly intervened. They've rung up the police 3 or 4 times.
Although wasn't his dad from Rwanda and was sort of had links to certain...
No, but the police, sorry, the parents, everybody's been attacking them. I don't know the background, and everything remains rumour. But the parents have repeatedly, it's on record, have got in touch with the police.
I can actually help with that, simply because we got a message round today from our very lovely compliance people, and what they said is the rumours about the family background are all garbage. The reality is this is just a normal couple of people who came over as economic migrants from Rwanda.
Economic migrants?
But no, there's no backstory of Hutus and Tutsis, though presumably they're one or the other. There's no history, there's no... This
is backing up exactly what I've been saying.
Yes.
I think that what we've got to do is something else. We've got to say, here are parents who, clearly in despair, can you imagine trying to handle somebody like this? In despair, is it 4 times they rang up the police?
Many times, yeah, whatever.
Times without number that they've dealt with the school, and nothing much has been done.
But what you're saying now, David, and I'm going to summarise...
We've normalised abnormality.
Exactly right.
Well, this is like the rape gangs as well. It's the same things happen there.
We're going to go to a break in a second, but I think it's really clear, and I want people to phone up about this, 03444991000, because you know what you've done, David, as you often do, and one thing I like about you, and I genuinely do like you, you've often said that it's the job of an academic to try and get people to steal their ideas, and I think that's a great point. Genuinely, I saw this in terms of terrorism equals ideology. I think you're right in the point that you make. I think we have to be willing to say that this person was born evil. This person is
or
a bad person.
Became evil.
This is a bad person.
That's right.
And actually, what we should have done when he presented himself in school was to say this bad person needs to go to a mental institution.
Exactly.
And forget about the rest.
Exactly.
OK, we're going to stick with David Starkey straight after this. And we're still here with Dr. David Starkey. David, I just want to... I'm just going to put this straight to you. I genuinely think that Axel Rudakubana should be put down. And I'm using that phrase deliberately because I believe that he is an animal that has no value whatsoever. What's your view on that? Because the death penalty now is going to become a debate. I don't care about how long will it be, how long will he be in prison, X, Y, Z. Although I will say, when we got told, well, it takes years to execute them because of all these appeals, this is exactly what happens.
No, in this country it didn't, did it? When we had that.
Hang on a second. This is exactly what we talk about with immigration, where we deliberately have activist lawyers filing 1,000 vexatious appeals in order to stop things. I think, look, Kelvin McKenzie came on the TV once and he said, for DNA-proven child killers, let's get rid of them. And I just personally think that, for me, killing Axel Rudakubana would just be something that would be a small mercy for the families. I don't know if it's going to reduce murder in the future. I don't know if it's going to act as a deterrent. I don't even know if it's a punishment. And in a sense, I don't care. I just don't want this beast to exist anymore.
I think that this is the kind of case where you cannot construct on the individual case any argument against it.
Yes.
The trouble is, you cannot... And if we are in a society bound by law, you can't actually say, we'll have a special act of parliament that declares he's going to be executed. We really can't. And I also think we're wasting our time by worrying about that. What is really important is we look at why this was handled so shockingly, scandalously, persistently badly by every agency of state. will spend an awful lot of money keeping this thing alive in jail until his fellow prisoners finish him off in preferably an extremely unpleasant fashion.
Well, we hope that doesn't happen for legal
I'm
reasons.
sorry.
I know no one would mourn him.
You may express these hopes.
We just have to say
observe it
we wouldn't be mourning him, would we?
Merely as a no doubt unfortunate possibility. You're clearly a much more sensitive soul than I am. But maybe more aware of Ofcom.
David, just to say the comma was for legal reasons.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Ofcom anymore. He's on YouTube.
Right, and a very nice.
But David, that's an interesting point. Just to stop, let me just say this.
The really key thing is that the state has buggered up this open and shut case. If you look at this lad from the age of 13, it has been obvious he was going to kill.
Yes.
And the only question is going to be how many,
and
where, and when. Just let me finish. Nothing at all has been done about it. We spent hundreds of millions of pounds on repeated machinery of the police, of mental health, of schools. It was a special school, of special schools, and we have an entire organisation called Prevent, which does not prevent.
Well, they're captured like everywhere else. They go on about the far right.
Hang on a second. Let me tell you something about Prevent, because when I was a local government advisor,
you were referred to it. I think
we were
several times.
We were the only local authority in the country that decided not to engage with Prevent, and the reason we decided not to engage with Prevent,
maybe the right wing,
because they wanted at the time to spy on Muslim young people. They wanted them at the time to have this open discussion with their teachers, which would be completely confidential, except it would be reported back to MI5. Now, I said it was completely unacceptable to do that. But what it struck me with Prevent was this. There was never an element of saying this person's an absolute wrong, and it was always, what could we do to help? And actually,
it was different.
Okay.
What it was about was, what ideological things has this person done? In other words, what manual have they read? What poetry have they read? What novel have they read? In other words, do you remember, Ash, we went back, and when I corrected you on terrorism, I said what we should focus on is the individual bloodlust.
Well, that's actually my point.
What Prevent does is have the legal definition of terrorism is one of these acts with a political motive. And what Prevent does, it looks at the political motive. In other words, basically, it is Islamist on the one hand and far right on the other. Now, we all know it's hugely prioritised far right. But the result of what Prevent has done, all it does, it says, let me look at what Axel has been reading, and it sort of looks down, and by that point the fact that he'd been looking at the Al-Qaeda manual hadn't come up, so he said, well, actually all he's been do you know what they said all he's been doing, he's been looking at genocide. He's been looking at torture. He's been looking at rape. That's absolutely fine. It's got absolutely no political component.
So Prevent should just be about murderous intent.
Just 1 second. On the other hand, at exactly the time this was going on, did you see on, I know we're not supposed to talk about GB News, but my old chum, now rather demoted on GB News, Jacob Rees-Mogg, shrunk from 5 days to 3. These terrible things happen.
He should be Prime Minister.
These terrible things happen. I mean, the point is, it was quite extraordinary. He was referred to Prevent. I happen to know the man who was responsible, and I shall not name names, for conducting the government survey as to whether Prevent was working. And I said to him, William, you know, it's quite impossible that Jacob be a terrorist. There's no room for a machete inside the suit.
But this shows they're captured, doesn't it? It shows Prevent are captured by the left.
No, it's not that. They're captured by the notion that you're driven by an idea. So why was poor old Jacob referred to Prevent? Because he'd read Rudyard Kipling.
They didn't really believe he's going to go crazy and kill people.
Sorry, no, but they're bureaucrats.
Well,
You're not understanding.
It's like the non-crime hate incident.
No, that's different. These people are bureaucrats. All they do, they sit there in an office and they have a list of what are the things that will radicalize somebody on the right. Now, obviously, it's headed by Mein Kampf, but by the time you get to the bottom, it's listening to Elgar and reading Rudyard Kipling. And obviously, Jacob was regarded as a relatively mild list because it was only Elgar and Rudyard Kipling.
Yes.
And they hadn't realised that he got a leather-bound copy, original first edition of Mein Kampf on his bookshelf. But
that's a joke.
And then
Probably has.
Ha ha ha.
Some people
just
read
to make absolutely clear.
historical.
And then on the other side, you look at, do they have the Quran? What have they been? What imams have they been listening to? It's completely mechanistic, and this is what Starmer's Britain is about. Nobody thinks.
So can I,
nobody.
He's an automaton, isn't he?
He's an automaton.
So
all they
at
do,
the right
they
time.
look at lists.
So can I ask you this
And
question?
laws.
Can I ask you this question then? Because my grandmother, I think this is a good example and kind of gives you a little bit of it. My grandmother loved the United Kingdom. She just didn't believe that Northern Ireland should have been part of it. She had a, well, I can only be polite.
No,
she did.
You're not
love-
a Fenian, are you?
She did.
You're not a Fenian.
Yes.
But you see, now that's also very interesting. Fenianism was the great source of late 19th century terrorism.
Without doubt. Now
The
let me
country was torn. Remember,
now let me
late 19th century Britain is torn apart by Fenian terrorism. Of
Okay,
course it is.
but let me make this point. My grandmother had a boarding house by the docks in Liverpool. Now, inevitably, that excited the interests of the police. Now, the reality was she was somebody who had a political interest in Irish republicanism and also the success of Rump United Kingdom, which is not particularly unusual for upper middle class Northern Irish Catholics. But
Do they exist?
But not anymore. Not anymore. But although growing these days. But my point is this. She was not interested in terrorism. She had no interest in fighting anybody.
Despite the political allegiance.
The political allegiance was a different thing. And actually her view very firmly was that the IRA had been taken over by people who were interested in killing rather than interested
And making
in
money
a
gangsters,
legitimate battle with British
Exactly right.
soldiers.
Exactly.
And I think that does talk to your point.
I thought exactly to my point. But you see, again, actually, it's going back to the fact these are statutes. They're defined in a particular way. You set up a Prevent is a bureaucracy. It's little people now working from home. They literally have a checklist. They've never encountered, I imagine physically, the kind of people doing it, have never encountered anybody like this man.
But I mean, in your Irish example, at first they were mainly attacking. It was soldiers. Is that still terrorism, or is that freedom fighting? If you don't attack innocent people,
they would attack anybody. I mean, look at the Birmingham bombs.
No, I'm talking about at the 1890, the 1900s.
No, they attacked anybody.
Did they?
Bombs were.
I thought they attacked the British soldiers.
Well, they will let off a bomb anywhere. I mean, terrorism is designed to be indiscriminate.
Well, the suffragettes, because they put bombs, didn't they?
Well, the suffragettes, the suffragettes on the whole,
They blew up Downing Street.
they damaged themselves.
But they didn't lay bombs. They didn't lay bombs.
Actually, let me just ask this. What constitutes...
It's really important. They sacrificed themselves. When we're talking about the terrorism...
Well, they did plant bombs like the IRA as well at points.
I don't... Is there
That's
any
Downing
evidence?
Street. Yeah, I think they did.
Any evidence of anybody being killed? I don't
think the suffragettes killed anyone.
They were very good at them.
I am not a... It's really important. Everybody admits ignorance. That is not an area I know about. I do know about Fenianism, and I do know about mid-19th century terrorism. And the intention of terrorism is indiscriminate slaughter, which will be immediately publicly recognised. I think what we've got wrong is to assume that the essential element is the political. That the reason, and if you look at all of these people, that we've got this vast long list. Virtually everybody who's taken part, we would generally describe as mad.
Yes.
Because we've focused on the ideology, we have failed usually to get the individual.
But David, this show, and if I turn round and have to apologise to my viewers and listeners, I'm happy to do that. But Asher and I have continually railed against the police saying this was not a jihadist, this is somebody who's mentally ill.